Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 25th of May, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information, which is certainly changing across south central and southwestern Alaska today and over the interior, where clouds are bubbling up, and you might see some rain and snow by the end of the day if you haven't already. West of Polychrome Pass, there's snow falling and could add up to almost a foot in some places. You can get all that information and a whole lot more before you ever watch Alaska Weather. Just simply call 1-800-472-0391. That is the Alaska Weather Information line. You can always find this information online as well, weather.gov/Alaska. And once you click that, you'll be taken to weather.gov/Fairbanks, Anchorage, or Juneau's weather forecast offices for more precise and pinpoint information for your location. You can get satellite images, radar images, as well as observations in your area, and get flying weather, and you can get all the maps that you'll see on Alaska Weather at any one of those websites any time of the day or night. Now, on top of that, if you are an aviator, you've probably noticed the big banner on the top of the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit page that says the website will be changing. And many of you have already responded with your comments and suggestions. We really do appreciate that because we want that website to work for you in the best way possible. So please check out the new website, weather.gov/AAWU. AWU is what we like to call it in the office. And you will be able to see some of the changes that have been made, and we are still working. It's certainly a work in progress, so let us know, let us have it. Just be firm in your beliefs and tell us what works and what does not, and we'll get right on it and do the very best we can. You can reach me anytime at david.snider@noaa.gov. Feel free to use that email for love, for hate, you love the show, want to see something else on the show, or just want to say hello and show me a picture of what it looks like in your part of Alaska. Would love to see that. Now, for tonight into tomorrow morning, west of Polychrome Pass, there is going to be snow. We're expecting stormfall totals. That means from the time it began earlier today to the time it ends, probably tomorrow morning, somewhere on the order of 4 to 11 inches of snow. There's already been about 4 to 7 inches of snow, I believe, from the last report I saw. So it is snowing, and some of that will come down hard and heavy at times west of Polychrome Pass. The road has been open, it's been closed, it's been open again. So yeah, it has been causing some issues there, but so far things sound pretty good, and it's still May in Alaska, and it's certainly still May around the big mountains. So no surprise there that it is snowing in the region. The amount of snow, of course, is always interesting no matter where you are. So maybe up to almost a foot around areas west of Polychrome Pass in Denali National Park tonight. So be advised, there you go. Most areas are not going to be dealing with snow. We're still dealing with unsettled weather, but as we look at the breakup map, we can see the signs of a very warm season and kind of a mush out there. No big surprises so far this year across the main stem rivers. We'll still watch the northern rivers there as we're seeing some open to some unknown conditions there as we get into the Colville area, but the higher terrain still iced up as we go through this Thursday, May 25th. Fire danger is changing, as it always will in the early season. You'll notice some higher than normal fire risk across the Copper River Basin around Golcana and the Copper River Valley itself. Mainly some of the areas to watch there as well as Tok and out across the international border right there. But so far, fire danger is severely limited because it has been a wetter last couple of weeks across the region, and it looks like that trend is going to continue at least for the next several days. As we look at the satellite picture, if you watch right about here, you're going to see all of the weather in Alaska rotating around that entire point. That is the upper level low pressure system that is in charge of our weather maker today. Pardon the lines there in the satellite scan. And we've got drier air working into the Gulf of Alaska right now. What's left of a cold front earlier is what you see right here in the clouds moving toward southeast. High pressure is a little bit farther east and south of the Panhandle, and that is keeping southeast in a fairly dry and mild state. Enjoy the weather. It is going to last you at least a couple more days, it looks like, while the rest of Alaska gets the cold, the dreary, and the kind of the messy parts of May. Up north around Shishmaref, certainly feeling a little bit more like winter. We hear there from Dennis and his weather report earlier this afternoon. Up around the North Slope, you can still see snow falling across the region. The clouds there coming in from the east and the north. A lot of cold air banked in across the North Slope this afternoon. Across the west, we saw clouds bubbling up in the heat of the day and some showers and even a few strikes out there. Saw a few thunderstorm lightning strikes there around and south of Seward on the fjords earlier this afternoon, and we saw the clouds bubbling up around South Central with reports of hail and graupel, that very small ice pellets that you see. They're not quite hail, but certainly isn't snow either. Across the interior, clouds were bubbling up this afternoon. This is all due to the cold air aloft and the warmer and unstable air down below, and just like a hot air balloon, those bubbles of air want to rise as high as they can before they meet the same temperature as what's inside the balloon. The balloon air is cooling off and the top of the atmosphere is already cold. And when that happens, it takes the moisture with it. It condenses, makes the clouds, and makes these beautiful towers that sometimes can support thunder and lightning, of course, or rain, hail, snow, or graupel. Here's a visible satellite picture, and as you see, the clouds were bubbling up across southwest and across the interior today in really great fashion. There's two waves to this. So the first wave is what came through. The cold front is already working its way toward the international border this afternoon. And not across the west, the upper level low and the colder air is now working its way in, and that whole combination is driving the weather that we're seeing today. So quite an interesting event, but certainly one that feels a little bit more like September, maybe even November, and depending on where you are in your part of Alaska. In the meantime, once again, southeast, getting the better side of this if you're ready for warm and dry weather. Here's the weather map this afternoon. Cold front was working across the Canadian border. Behind that, showers were erupting across the interior. Most of these seem very small on the radar, but if you're under them, some of them really put down some quick and heavy precipitation. A few showers or thunderstorms were moving around the second low. That was moving across southwestern Alaska at 1,009 millibars. Once again, southeast enjoying the fine weather with high pressure down to your south at 1,027 millibars. Out across the west, showers will continue close to the western coast. Up north, low pressure sitting just north of the Bering Strait at 1,000 millibars, and across the North Slope, specifically around the Chukchi coast, at 998 millibars, we had snow. So we were looking at quite a range of weather today, and out across the Aleutians, another wave of low pressure on the back side of this, 1,015 millibars, not very strong, enough to change the winds around, of course, and enough to focus rainfall moving across the central and eastern chain. Here's what it looks like tonight. Rain and snow showers across a large part of the interior. Now, for many locations, this looks really scary. This looks like everyone's going to get snow. Chances are most locations are not going to see snow below about 1,000 feet. So probably where most people are living, we're not going to be dealing with any accumulation, and if you do see a few snowflakes, they're not going to last very long. Most of us are not going to have that kind of weather, except west of Polychrome Pass, where you could see upwards of 4 to 11 inches by the time it's all said and done. We have seen some reports of snow or graupel down around the Glen Alps trailhead and maybe a little bit on the hillside. Expect that to be the case in the morning. You are going to see some snow a little bit lower in elevation than you did this morning. Again, we're not expecting this to make any impacts to roadways or travel conditions where you are. Some of the mountain passes may see a slight dusting, but again, no watches, warnings, or advisories are posted for any part of Alaska through the interior or on the road system as of tonight. Now, south of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, this wave will continue to work up the Pacific coast of the Alaska Peninsula. This is going to be another surge of moisture that works its way into the western Gulf over Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and into south central and eventually the interior over the next couple days. In the meantime, out east, the front is starved for moisture, running into high pressure. It may bring in some more clouds for southeast tonight. It should not bring in additional precipitation in any big way. Up north, snow showers continue for the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, and the eastern sections of Norton Sound. As we go into Friday, look at low pressure here working in across St. Lawrence Island. Rain and snow showers may mix. The winds will be switching around to more of a northerly direction in very slow fashion during the day. This is going to keep moisture banked up into Norton Sound and Unalakleet and Kotzebue Sound. Expect periods of rain and snow showers there. The risk for thunderstorms will be a little more confined to areas generally north of Fairbanks to the Brooks Range summits out toward Ambler and Bettles, maybe as far west as Ambler. That's probably about as far west as you need to go for that. And then showers occasionally across south central, rain in Prince William Sound. And here's our low pressure center south and west of Kodiak Island, trying to add more heat and moisture to the weather picture. Southeast looking fine. High pressures down to your south and west, 1,025 millibars there. Periods of partly to mostly cloudy conditions. So you're going to enjoy your Friday. Out west, high pressure is also building in south and west of the Pribilofs and north of Adak and Atka. So you may see periods of fog, but you may also see periods of clear sky in that. Saturday's forecast keeps high pressure stretching northward across the international line and outside of southeast. So more clouds may gradually drift in your area. Still not looking for any sizable precipitation risk. The low pressure system across the western Gulf doesn't move. The focus for showers and thunderstorms becomes a little bit closer to the Yukon Delta, Norton Sound, and the Seward Peninsula. We may see some snow showers around the Brooks Range summits thanks to cold air still parked over the northern sections of Alaska, and rain and snow showers from Kotzebue Sound all the way around the Chukchi Coast and maybe just east of Barrow to Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse. Out across the Bering Sea, periods of rain and snow there, and low pressure, a new one, moves in toward Kiska and heads eastward toward Adak at 994 millibars. So an awful lot is going on, but there's an awful lot of cold air parked over Alaska at this point, with the upper level low still right over the 49th state. You'll see that in the jet stream map in just a minute. Temps today, pretty nice. If you are around central and southern parts of southeast, you made it into the mid to upper 50s, even lower 60s for some locations. Hyder was at 62, the capital city closer to 50, about the same there in Sitka. Prince William Sound, Cordova, and Valdez, and 3 o'clock we're looking at mid 40s, 51 in Seward and Homer today. There was a couple lightning strikes in your region. 47 in Kenai, 49 in Anchorage. A struggle to get there today for sure. Looked like the Matanuska Glacier was reporting 37, Golcana 46, Fairbanks had 51. At the Healy weather station it was 45, significantly colder though west of that, and many locations around south central saw a pretty substantial dip in temperature once the rain and the graupel and the hail moved in. Temps dipped a good 10 to 15 degrees very quickly. 51 degrees around Eagle this afternoon. It was 52 in Fort Yukon, 45 up around Arctic Village, and nice to have that observation back. 43 around Anaktuvuk Pass, and lower to mid 30s for most of the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast. 31 in Barrow. Lower 40s around Kotzebue. Is 34 in Shishmaref today, 33 for Nome, 35 around St. Lawrence, and looks like Unalakleet was showing 41. 41 for Galena as well. Russian Mission and Holy Cross, temps there in the upper 30s and lower 40s today. 41 for Bethel, 38 for Nunivak Island. 40s for most of the Alaska Peninsula. As you get around Cold Bay and False Pass, temps were struggling to get out of the 30s today. It was 53 in Kodiak Island. Lower 40s for St. Paul and St. George, Dutch Harbor and Unalaska 43, and our friends out in Adak today 46, so not too bad. Overnight low temperatures will stay above freezing for the central and eastern parts of the Tanana Valley and the upper Yukon all the way down into the upper Kuskokwim, but it does get a little bit colder there east of Bethel and all the way out toward the Alaska Range. Boy, temps there could go just below freezing. 38 in Kodiak Island. Mid to maybe even upper 40s for some in southeast, upper 20s for the North Slope, 29 in Nome, and the Alaska Peninsula upper 30s there. South central looking at temps close to 40 degrees. Not a big change overnight, but as we get into tomorrow it should be warmer. Lower 50s for most of south central, the Matanuska and Susitna valleys there. Closer to 60 degrees for southern parts of southeast. Again, the capital city back in the mid 50s. Lower 50s for Fairbanks in the middle Tanana Valley out toward North Pole. Upper 30s for the North Slope. Arctic Village 45, 55 in Fort Yukon. In fact, Ambler and Bettles in the upper 40s. 38 around Nome. Bethel looking at temps in the mid 40s tomorrow. St. Paul 41 and mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula out toward Dutch Harbor at 42. On the flying weather, most of the interior will see VFR conditions despite showers or even a thunderstorm passing through. IFR conditions around the Kotzebue Sound region, St. Lawrence to St. Matthew, southwestern Capes, and the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula east of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. MVFR to start for southeast and inside of Prince William Sound to Portage Pass. That lingers there but improves across southeast. Watch out for convection across the northern interior tomorrow. IFR conditions across the Beaufort Seacoast and around the Chukchi Coast, Point Hope and Point Lay, and also outside of Norton Sound down toward the Yukon Delta and south of Sand Point. Here's a look at your pass conditions. MVFR conditions may develop during the day around Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass there with some weather moving through. Watch for Lake Clark and Merrill Pass to see VFR conditions through most of the day. Same goes for Rainy Pass, and it looks like most of the thunderstorm conditions will generally be north of the south central passes as well as those just into the southern interior. VFR for Windy and Isabel Pass as we go through your Friday. Mentasta Pass looks pretty good at this point, and we also think that Tanita Pass should be VFR through most of your Friday. There will be plenty of clouds around. Portage Pass will see lower decks and ceilings there. MVFR conditions expected, as well as Chilkoot and White Pass looking at VFR conditions by the end of the day. So some improvement as we just saw on the chart. Freezing levels are way low. The surface freezing lines there are painted in white. You can see those surrounding most of the higher terrain. So we know that levels are at least around 1,000 to 2,000 feet in most locations there. But here's the 2,000-foot freezing line, just a sign of how cold this air is. It covers up really most of the mainland and the west coast and the eastern Bering Sea, but it sure is packed across southeast. It ranges from 2,000 feet around Haines and Skagway and Gustavus to about 10,000 feet for the Dixon entrance, and similar conditions here across the western chain. So this right here is a big ball of cold air sitting right on top of the 49th state. Icing potential is going to be hit and miss across south central. The main cold and the main moisture seems to be gathered up around the low pressure system here across the Seward Peninsula and the Bering Strait. And there will be some areas of fog, probably freezing, across the north slope. So we'll say generally above 3,000 feet, but there are going to be some lower conditions there as you head north and closer to the center of low pressure there, and also around that remnant front across the eastern Gulf there, but the moisture is pretty lacking in that case. Here's a jet stream. You see this big path right here? This is the cold air path. All of that cold air has been filling in across Alaska with the main core of low pressure around the Bering Strait. The big superhighway of weather, the big path that all of the weather really wants to be on, is still well south, but enough moisture has been lashed into that northern path where the cold air is that we've gotten a taste of that for sure in the last 24 hours. Southerlies are responsible for moving that moisture northward at 9,000 feet. You can see winds from 15 to as strong as 40 knots there inside the Seward Peninsula and over parts of the Kotzebue Sound region. Winds stay fairly light across southeast. Southerlies 15 to 20, and a slight attempt at a ridge building across the southern Bering Sea at 3,000 feet. You can see that's already there. Winds moving in from more of a westerly direction, 15 knots. Southerlies coming across the Gulf at 10 to 20. And again, stronger winds generally across the west at 30 to 40 knots, moving over parts of the Yukon Delta northward toward Barrow, and light winds across southeast. Turbulence potential will be pretty spotty. Southern end of Kodiak Island below 3,000 feet. Some chop there across some of your Alaska Range passes as you move northward toward places like Healy and into the middle Tanana Valley, across the Brooks Range, and especially across the west, the Kobuk and Noatak Valleys, and over the Seward Peninsula below 4,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with the rest of your marine weather and a sea ice update after Stargazers.
Care for some tea?
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
Summer is almost here, and one of my favorite asterisms will be making its appearance in the early evening sky next month.
That's right, James. The teapot will be gracing the southern sky, and if you're a night owl, you can get a preview of it next week.
What are we talking about? Let's show you. Okay, we have our skies set for shortly after midnight any night next week, facing southeast. Near the horizon, you'll see the stars of Sagittarius the Centaur Archer. He's just to the east of the J-shaped constellation of Scorpius the Scorpion.
Many of the stars of Sagittarius are too faint to see from most cities. However, there are 8 stars here that are fairly bright, and they form what we call an asterism, kind of like the Big Dipper in Ursa Major and the Sickle in Leo the Lion.
Therefore, the teapot in Sagittarius is not an official constellation. Nevertheless, it's a fun pattern to spot, and with a little imagination, you can enjoy watching it cruise across the sky to pour tea on the tail of Scorpius the Scorpion.
The stars Caus Media, Alnazzle, and Caus Australis make the spout.
Caus Media, Caus Borealis, and Phi Sagittarii make the lid.
Caus Media, Phi Sagittarii, Escella, and Caus Australis make the body of the teapot.
And Phi Sagittarii, Acella, Tau Sagittarii, and Nunki make the handle.
Finally, if you have super dark skies and a good imagination, the Milky Way looks like steam coming out the spout of the teapot.
No way.
Yes way.
As legend has it, Scorpius the Scorpion wanted to show off his brand new teapot by having a tea party.
This is a legend?
Well, okay, it's kind of a story I made up.
But scorpions don't drink tea.
Just play along, it'll be fun.
Okay, if you say so.
So anyway, Scorpius invited Orion the Hunter and his 2 hunting dogs, Canis Major and Canis Minor, to his tea party. Unfortunately for Scorpius, he forgot that those constellations are in the winter part of the sky. So by the time they arrived, the sky had rotated so far that all the tea poured out of the teapot, leaving only the steam behind. So what do you think?
You don't put tea in a teapot. You actually boil water in a teapot, and you use that water to make tea in a separate cup with a tea bag.
Maybe it's a magic teapot?
On that note, let's see what the planets are doing. Okay, we have our skies set for midnight anytime next week. Since you're up looking for Sagittarius, you're in for a treat. The largest planets in our solar system are both in the sky at that time.
Directly above Sagittarius is a yellowish, non-twinkling light. That is the ring planet Saturn, and it's getting closer and closer to us, reaching opposition on Thursday, June 15th.
The next few weeks will be great for viewing Saturn because when Saturn is near opposition, it's opposite the sun in the sky. This is also when the planet is at its closest to Earth, and it appears bigger and brighter than it will all year.
If Jupiter is your favorite planet, look toward the southwest in the constellation Virgo the Maiden. Jupiter will be the bright, non-twinkling light near the star Spica. If you have a small telescope, you should check out both Jupiter and Saturn.
Saturn sports a collection of bright rings, and they're tilted toward the Earth right now, making Saturn even easier to see.
And Jupiter will be accompanied by its 4 largest moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. If you can, look at Jupiter each night through a telescope for 3 or 4 nights in a row. You'll see Jupiter's moons changing position every night as they orbit the giant planet.
So there you have it, 2 planets to dazzle the midnight hours.
And make the stars your own while you imagine sipping tea from a magical celestial teapot.
It's all part of the wonder when you keep looking up.
Big changes again with today's sea ice map. Larger areas seen there on the concentration region under 80%. No surprise there. There's also some open water now north of the Bering Strait. We still have higher concentrations inside of Kotzebue Sound and along the northern coast around Cape Espenberg, and then west all the way down toward Wales and into Norton Sound. You can see plenty of open water there. Expect continued changes as generally mild conditions continue. Make sure you check in for the very latest at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice, as well as information on the sea ice for walrus outlook. Those are updated on a routine basis as well. Across southeast, look for southerlies moving up through the Lynn Canal, 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Generally light winds across Stevens Passage and southward toward Petersburg, 3-foot seas there. Northwesterlies across the Clarence Strait, 4-foot seas. On the outer coast, even lighter winds, 10 to 15 for most areas until you get just outside of the Dixon entrance, 20 knots with a 7-foot sea. Winds coming from the north and west. We'll keep northerlies from Sitka southward, 15 to 20, 5 to 6-foot seas there. 15 to 20 knot winds on the inside. And generally light winds outside of Cross Sound northward toward Yakutat with 4 to 5-foot seas there on the 10-knot wind for Saturday. For South Central, light winds across the northern Gulf and inside of Prince William Sound, only 2-foot seas for Friday. Southerlies across Cook Inlet, much better than we saw today, 15 knots with a 3 to 4-foot sea. Variable winds inside of Shelikof Strait and light southerlies outside of the Barren Islands and east of Kodiak Island, 4 to 5-foot seas there on Friday. That changes on Saturday with a broad and stronger easterly flow moving across the north and western Gulf, 25 to 30 knots with 6 to 8-foot seas expected. 3-foot seas inside of Prince William Sound, 15 knots there on north and easterly wind coming down Cook Inlet, 15 to 20. Look for seas up to 5 feet there with 8 to 9-foot seas west of the Barrens and into Shelikof Strait on that easterly 25-knot wind for Saturday. Bristol Bay looking at light easterly winds, 10 knots, 4-foot seas there, 5-foot seas down the coast, and south and easterly winds across the Pacific coast, 6 to 7-foot seas there on a 20-knot wind for Friday. As we get into Saturday, that starts to bend around a little bit more from the east and northeast thanks to low pressure in the western Gulf. Looking at 8-foot seas on the Pacific coast and 2 to 5-foot seas across the Bering Sea coast with a 15-knot wind inside of Bristol Bay from the east. For the Aleutians, look for winds all over the place. North and northwesterlies across the central and eastern chain. Northerlies across the Pacific coast, 15 to 20. You're looking at 7 to 8-foot seas there. East and southeasterly winds west of Adak toward Shemya. 6-foot sea there on 20-knot winds. As we get into Saturday, that strengthens more from the south and southeast, 25 to 30, all pulling back into that new wave of low pressure developing there. We'll look for 9 to 11-foot seas there. Remember, there's still a low right about here as well on Saturday. Variable winds north of Unalaska, 15 to 30 knots across the central and eastern chain, with 5 to as high as 9-foot seas there on the Pacific coast, and 3 to 6-foot seas across the eastern and central Bering Sea coast there, with again more of a variable flow north of Nikolsky and Unalaska. Across the west coast, south and westerly winds north of Nunivak Island, still trying to push heat northward into that iced up area north of the Bering Strait. 5 to 6-foot seas there. Westerlies for St. Matthew, St. Paul, and St. George, and southerlies in the Kuskokwim Delta with a 4-foot sea there across the Kuskokwim coast. By Saturday, the winds diminish a little bit there more. Southeasterlies 10 knots with the 3-foot sea. Variable winds around Hooper Bay and west, and southeasterlies coming into St. Lawrence Island with a 4-foot sea. We'll keep variable winds around St. Paul and St. George. 4-foot seas for most of the central and northern Bering, building up a little bit more around St. Matthew to 6 feet on Saturday. Across the Beaufort Seacoast, still over the ice, east and southeasterly winds there. Southerlies from Barrow all the way down the Chukchi coast, looking at 4-foot seas in most areas with 15 to 20-knot winds from the south. By Saturday, the winds diminish a little bit. A south and southeasterly flow for just about everyone. 2 to 4-foot seas, let's say, across Kotzebue Sound area as well as up the Chukchi coast. You're looking at 10 to 15 as well as 5 to 10-foot seas, or 5 to 10-knot winds, I should say, across the eastern and central Beaufort Seacoast. A light northerly flow there for the eastern Beaufort Seacoast on Saturday. Recapping tonight's weather, the first push of colder air has made it across most of the state tonight. As that happens, snow levels will drop to about 1 to 1.5 or 1,500 feet or so. You will probably see snow. If you've got hills in your backyard, you'll likely see that. We're not expecting any sizable accumulation anywhere, really, at city or road level. However, that's not going to be the case west of Polychrome Pass, where you could see as much as 4 to 11 inches by early tomorrow morning. It turns back into rain by the afternoon. Showers and thunderstorms possible and more likely north of Fairbanks. And as we get into Saturday, dry weather continues for southeast. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.